Correction in a system that has momentum does not feel like improvement. It feels like interference. The process slows. The team resists. Output dips. Every metric that was moving in the right direction starts moving in the wrong one. That is not evidence that the change was a mistake. That is what directional correction costs in a system that was optimized for its previous trajectory. The system is not broken. It is recalibrating. Most founders cannot tell the difference and reverse the change before it takes hold. That reversal is one of the most expensive mistakes a founder can make. Not because the original change was definitely right, but because the decision to reverse it was made at the worst possible moment, when the cost of the correction was highest and the benefit was least visible. The system was in the middle of absorbing a change. The metrics were reflecting the disruption, not the outcome. And the founder, reading disruption as failure, pulled back before the recalibration had time to complete. The change did not fail. The founder stopped it from succeeding. Understanding why this happens requires understanding how systems respond to directional change. A system that has been running in one direction for a long time develops trajectory inertia. Every process, every habit, every default behavior has been optimized for the previous direction. When the direction changes, all of that optimization becomes friction. The processes that were efficient are now misaligned. The habits that were productive are now counterproductive. And all of that friction shows up immediately in the metrics, while the benefits of the new direction are still weeks or months away from being visible. This is the window where most founders lose confidence. The cost of the change is on full display. The return is not yet measurable. And the comparison that gets made is not between the new trajectory and the old one at full maturity. It is between the disrupted present and the comfortable recent past. That comparison always favors reversal. The founder is not comparing two trajectories. They are comparing a finished product to a work in progress. That comparison is never fair, and it almost always produces the wrong decision. Resistance is directional information. When a system pushes back against a change, it is telling you that the change is real enough to disrupt the existing architecture. A change that produces no resistance is a change that changed nothing. The founders who successfully redirect their operations are not the ones who avoided resistance. They are the ones who understood that resistance was confirmation, not contradiction. The pushback meant the correction was working. They stayed in it long enough to find out. The decision to reverse a directional change should never be made during the disruption window. That window has a specific shape. Metrics drop first, then they stabilize. Then, if the change was correct, they begin recovering toward a new and better baseline. The reversal instinct is strongest at the bottom of that curve, which is also the worst time to act on it. Wading through the bottom requires the founder to hold a position that every short-term signal is arguing against. Most founders never develop that capacity because they have never had a framework for distinguishing resistance from failure. And without that framework, every correction feels like a crisis, and every crisis feels like a reason to retreat. Every system has a recalibration cost. The larger the gap between the old trajectory and the new one, the higher that cost. Most founders calculate the cost of changing direction and decide it is too high. What they do not calculate is the cost of staying on the wrong trajectory for another 12 months. The pain of correction is visible and immediate. The cost of continuation is invisible and compounding. Founders consistently choose the pain they cannot see over the pain they can. The way to change that calculus is to do both calculations before making the decision to reverse. Not just what does this change cost right now, but what does staying on the current trajectory cost over the next year? When the compounding cost of continuation becomes visible, it almost always exceeds the disruption cost of correction. The change that looked too expensive at month 1 looks obviously necessary at month 12 if the alternative trajectory is mapped out honestly. There is also a sequencing element that most founders miss. The disruption from a directional change is front-loaded. The benefit is back-loaded, which means the founder who reverses early gets the worst of both outcomes. They absorb the disruption cost without staying long enough to collect the benefit. And then they return to a trajectory that continues compounding its own cost invisibly. Front-loaded pain with no payoff. backloaded costs with no visibility. That is the outcome of reversing too early, and it is the most common outcome because the timing of the reversal instinct is almost perfectly misaligned with the timing of the correction's benefit. The founders who get this right are not more tolerant of pain. They are better at distinguishing between recalibration pain and the pain of a genuinely wrong decision. Recalibration pain is temporary, front loaded, and tied to a specific change with a specific expected outcome. Wrong decision pain is persistent, does not resolve as the system absorbs the change, and gets worse rather than stabilizing. If the metrics are stabilizing after the initial drop, the change is likely recalibrating. If they are continuing to deteriorate without stabilization, the direction of the change deserves examination. One tells you to stay, the other tells you to reassess. But you can only tell the difference if you stay long enough to watch which pattern emerges. Fixing your business feels like things are getting worse first, because that is exactly what is happening. The question is not whether the disruption is happening. The question is whether it is the price of a better trajectory or the symptom of a wrong one. And that question can only be answered by staying in the correction long enough to see which way the stabilization goes. Next episode, we are going into something that connects directly to this. What to stop doing before you even think about scaling. Because most founders approach scale as an addition problem when it is actually a subtraction problem first. I will see you tomorrow.